Well, we are just over 24 hours from the tip-off of the first four in the NCAA tournament. A happy St. Patrick's Day to you, as well, as we're filming this here on Wednesday. And I'm excited. I mean, we're going to have the first four tomorrow night. We have a couple interesting matchups, but I'm sure that you've been looking at filling out your bracket, looking at a lot of different analysts and getting their picks in. And maybe you just have a couple that you're tinkering with at the end. We're hoping that we can help you out, give you a little bit of good luck and insight before you have to finalize that bracket before tomorrow evening.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's going to be great. We've got some good picks coming up here for you. But as always, man, if you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button, drop a like as well. And, we talked about it this week, actually. If you have questions for us, we love to hear them. And on the social media as well. If you want to interact during the games, Twitter is a great place to do that with us. You can find the link in the bio. But on questions, we actually got a question on social this week. This one is from Matt. Which Zags player is the most important to them making a championship run?
Yeah.
Matt has Joel Ayayi being the X factor there. And this is one that you and I have talked about off air actually just a couple days ago recently. And for us, we agree Ayayi and Nembhard both will be X factors for a deep championship run.
Yeah, I think that you kind of go to that BYU game where Joel Ayayi went off in that first half. I feel like it kind of gets forgotten with how well Suggs played down the stretch. But if Joel Ayayi doesn't play like he did in the first half versus BYU, are they even able to make it back in that game?
Yeah.
I think of the West Virginia game, how well Nembhard played. I think for this team, once they get through the Sweet 16, in the Elite Eight moving forward, you're going to have one of those two guys really playing well. I mean, aside from the big three, if one of those two doesn't play well, I mean, you're kind of banking on a Corey Kispert 8 or 9 3-point game, some big, huge game that you can't necessarily put all your cards in. So I think it's going to be one of those two guys down the stretch for sure. But let's get into the bracket. We had a chance to kind of go over each other's right before. We did not fill our brackets out together. We filled them out independently. We did have a chance right before we went on air to look at each other's brackets for the first time. Very similar.
Definitely.
I think when we get down to it, we had 7 of the same Elite 8. I know we do have the same championship matchup, but there are a few ones that we're different on that we'll get into. But let's start with it in the West region, and that's going to be our Gonzaga Bulldogs taking on the winner of the number 16 seed between Norfolk State and Appalachian State. And that first four matchup will be tomorrow night. So if you want to see either of those teams play before they take on the Zags, you can tune on to True TV tomorrow night to catch that matchup. But listen, this is not a Virginia-UMBC matchup here. That was a team in UMBC that was very underseeded, to give Virginia credit. That was not a 16 seed. These are 16 seeds. Zag fans, I know we're going to hear it because a 1 seed finally
it's
lost.
Inevitable.
But this is not the second time it's going to happen.
No, not at all. This is not a team. Either of these not teams we have to worry about. I think the Zags cruise into the second round here.
Into that 8-9 matchups. This was one of the hardest matchups I had picking.
Definitely.
If you didn't, go back, watch our show on Monday. We really did an in-depth breakdown of the Zags bracket on both of these teams, but both of these teams a month ago would not have been as lowly seeded as they are. You would have probably been afraid to play them a month ago. They are both playing terrible ball. But at the end of the day, we each chose Oklahoma to win over Missouri. And there's one reason and one guy why we chose that.
Yeah, that X factor for Oklahoma is Brady Manick. Again, we talked about it on Monday's show. Brady Manick is 12 of 28 from 3 in his last 5 games. That's 43%. We know Austin Reeves is going to get his. If Manick is shooting the ball like that, I think Oklahoma pulls this win out.
In that 5-12 matchup between Creighton and UC Santa Barbara, there are 3 things that we're going to get into today when I'm filling out my bracket that I look out for. And the first one we'll get into is a heat check. How well is your team playing going into March or not playing? We all know about the distractions that are going on within the Creighton Blue Jay program, and it's really spilled over into the court. This is a team that was on a 46-8 run on the negative side that you want to be versus Georgetown. It would not surprise anyone if they win this game. I mean, they are the 5 seed. They are a good team. Sure. They are not playing good basketball right now. And this UC Santa Barbara team has 2 guards that are very good. They have a Tacoma native. They've got a transfer from Pacific. And they also have, a talented big man down low from Molly.
Definitely. They've got some dudes on that team that people may not know about. You mentioned the Tacoma native, Ja'Cory McLaughlin. Great player for UC Santa Barbara. And just with everything going on inside of Creighton, I really look to how well UC Santa Barbara shares the ball and how well they take care of it. And I think that is a tipping point in this game. I see the 12-5 upset that we always hear about happening in the West region as UC Santa Barbara pulls this one out.
Yeah, that second guard we mentioned is Ajari Sani, played for Pacific, so Zeg fans may recognize him if you do get a chance to watch that game. So we do each have the 12 seed in UC Santa Barbara beating Creighton, meaning as we get into the round of 32, we would be looking to a 13 versus 12 matchup. In this next game, we'll give a little preview because that's the Virginia-Ohio game. And I think that if there's one upset that each of us are probably the most confident in, it's this one, this 13-4. Virginia is coming off of their COVID pause. They can't practice till tomorrow and Thursday. They will not get to Indy until Friday. But that's not the reason that either of us are choosing Ohio to win this game. This is a very talented Ohio team. They may be more talented than Virginia. And the next thing I want to get into when I'm choosing my bracket is I'm looking at talent. And I know that sounds so simple, but if you've got NBA guys on your team, that is a big deal in March. We've seen it with Ja Morant. We've seen it with Seth Curry at Davidson. Sorry, Zeg fans, to bring that back up. But if you've got a guy who is an NBA talent and they're playing a team in Virginia who may not have a whole lot of NBA talent, a lot of times that's the upsets you see. This Ohio team is no joke. Jason Preston is a legit possible first-round draft pick, a very LaMelo Ball type player. He can really score from all facets of the game. And then you've got a 6'8", 250-pound forward in Dwight Wilson. He's averaging 14 and 7 on the season, so love to see that big guy down there just going to work. And then they've got the 2 Bens. That's Ben Vanderplas and Ben Roderick. Vanderplas, I swear to goodness, Kelly Olynyk has to be his favorite player. He looks like him. He plays like him. A lot of the offense goes through him. And then Ben Roderick shooting over 40% from 3 on the season. I mean, this team's got all the pieces to win 1 or 2 games in this tournament.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, for me, Preston is going to be the best guard in this game. And I think the pick and pop that they bring to the table with Vanderplas will create problems for Virginia. Definitely agree with you, man. I think, we talked about it. It's the one we're most confident in for our upsets. I definitely see this one happening.
Moving on, so we have the 13 versus 12 in the round of 32 in Ohio versus UC Santa Barbara. Going down in the West region, USC will play the winner of Wichita State and Drake. Drake is finally getting back their best player in Shaquan Hemphill. This is a team that was running a 5-man rotation in their conference tournament.
Yeah, brutal.
The fact that they have to play a first 4 game, then come on and play USC, I don't really care who wins that first 4 game. We each have USC in that. Evan Mobley is going to be a top 3 draft pick in the NBA draft. He reminds you a lot of kind of like Chris Bosh. He is just electric down low in the paint, can shoot it a little bit. And then I'll tell you something with USC is as good as Evan Mobley is, Isaiah Mobley, his brother, doesn't really get any credit. He's kind of the other big guy, 6'10", on that USC squad. They are the tallest team in the NCAA tournament. And so this is a team that I think could make a deep run in March.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. We're going to keep talking about it, but you got to have dudes, and Mobley is that guy. I mean, he can guard 1 through 5. He's incredibly efficient on the scoring end of things, and all in all, man, I just see it being very hard. I can't see them losing that game.
So they will take on the winner of Kansas and our Eastern Washington Eagles. Man, as much as I want to choose Eastern to win this game, and with all that's going on in the Kansas program, they will be without Jalen Wilson, without David McCormick. I'm just not sure if Eastern Washington has enough to even beat a Kansas team down 2 starters. I know that you've watched a little bit more Eastern this year than I have. I think it'll be a close game going into the second half, but I just don't see them having enough pieces to pull it off.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. This is one that I hovered over for a little bit. I still mark Kansas, but losing McCormick, I think, is big for Kansas, and will make this a game for Eastern Washington. Not having McCormick down low is going to allow the Groves brothers to eat a little bit out there. And this Eastern team has got better throughout the season. Of course, they were starting Davison. They benched him in favor of Meadows, who brought a little bit more defensive mind to the backcourt there, and has made them better. So while I do have Kansas marked down, I do think that's actually going to be a great game.
Looking into so we've got USC playing Kansas in the round of 32. In the bottom half of the West region, you've got the 7 versus 10 in Oregon versus VCU. VCU's a fine team. They've got a guy by the name of Nishan Hyland. He's averaging 19 points per game, shoots 37% from 3. Nice team. Oregon's one of those teams that has all the talent to make an Elite 8 run. Yeah. When we get into March, one of the other factors I like to look at is coaching, and Dana Altman is that it coach. He is a coach that can take a team a round or 2 further than maybe they should go. But here's what I see with Oregon. Can we get a Georgetown-like emergence where with a week off after that loss to in-state rival Oregon State, this team finally figures it out? Will Richardson was out most of the season from that ACL injury. He is back. Chris Duarte is a stud for this Oregon Duck team, and so we each have Oregon over VCU.
Yep, have to agree with that. Oregon, I think, kind of fell off the national media a little bit. Got to remember, Duarte was hurt for a little bit during the season. He's been back, and like you said, man, he is going to be one of, if not the best player on the floor there. For me, he is the tipping point. Oregon wins this game.
Final game in the West region is number 2 Iowa versus number 15 Grand Canyon. Look for this to be a game that may be closer at halftime than a lot of people think. Might be on upset alert. I think that if that's the case, those next 10 minutes in the second half might be ugly for Grand Canyon. I see Luka Garza and Iowa moving on really with not a whole lot of issues versus Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
We get into the East, number 1 seed Michigan. Not a whole lot to get into there. They're going to play a first 4 winner there. Michigan's going to win. Don't need to give you a whole lot of breakdown there. And then let's go to that LSU St. Bonnie's game. That St. Bonaventure team is a trendy pick. There are a lot of experts that are choosing St. Bonaventure to win this game. LSU has 3 legitimate NBA prospects. We go back to the talent gap. There is an enormous talent gap between these two teams.
Yeah.
If St. Bonaventure is going to win this game, though, it's going to be because LSU is one of the worst defensive efficiency teams in this entire tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely an issue, and one that will always rear its head during the tournament. LSU, while they do have 3 dudes, their bench has not been as productive as you might like. That being said, I think Cameron Thomas, Javonte Smart, and Watford as well, just too much in this game. LSU is taking this for me.
This is one of those that I think LSU is good enough to beat Michigan in that next round. I'm not choosing that, just they're good enough to beat Michigan. Not sure St. Bonaventure is. Going down to that 5-12 matchup, I believe this is the first discrepancy we have in our brackets, and that's the 5-12 between Colorado and Georgetown. And really one of the last points going into March that I look at for a bracket is how well is your team playing. Georgetown, we all know the story. We know that they played really well through the Big East tournament, but there's a few things like people don't understand about this team. They're the best 3-point shooting team in the Big East. I think a lot of coaches in the Big East would tell you they're not super surprised that what happened. Sure. Maybe the national narrative, everyone was shocked, but this team has the talent. I'm just thinking they kind of figured it out at the right time, and I'll tell you with Colorado, I'm choosing Georgetown in this. I know you've got Colorado.
Yep.
Is Colorado, outside of conference play, hasn't really beaten anybody this season. Tell me why you're choosing the Buffaloes over the Hoyas in this one.
McKinley Wright the fourth. That's my reason right there, man. I've watched him. He is a baller, and I just feel like Georgetown, while they've put it together, I almost feel like coming off that Creighton win, they're going to be a little bit too high on things, maybe not be locked in as they need to be. McKinley Wright's a difference maker for me. That's why I have Colorado.
So I think we've got a drink on that game is what we just heard.
Yeah.
So Steve will be buying me a drink after Georgetown takes down Colorado.
Free drinks always taste the best, so I'll let you know how it is.
We've got that on film. Next game, Florida State versus UNC Greensboro. Not a whole lot, honestly. I mean, if you want to know anything about UNC Greensboro, Isaiah Miller is a very good player. Mm-hmm. For me, no knack on the rest of that team. That's kind of where it ends for them. Florida State is a team that can go very deep in this tournament. We've been all over them for over a month on this show that you do not want to face them. I'm very happy they're not in the Zags region. This is a team that has the talent to go to a Final Four. UNC Greensboro does not have enough. This could be one of the games in the first round that gets ugly. And then we go on to the next one, and this is our next one that we have a discrepancy. Is BYU versus the winner of that Michigan State-UCLA game. I do think Michigan State's going to handle UCLA no problem in that first four. And then I think we're going to have a BYU-Michigan State matchup. I can totally see BYU pulling out the victory like you have in your bracket. It's a team that, give them credit. I mean, they did not back down from number one Gonzaga. This was a game right down to the 4-minute mark in that WCC championship. I do not think they will be intimidated by a Tom Izzo Michigan State squad. However, I know Michigan State hasn't been on a great run of late. I think they have the talent. I know they've got the coach. And history tells me you've always got to choose Izzo to go 1 or 2 rounds further in the tournament.
Yeah, it's one of those games where I was actually ready to pick Michigan State earlier this week. I definitely agree with Izzo. It's just one of those things you have to count on. For me, though, I went back and kind of reviewed the end of their season, and I felt I was riding a little bit too high on them beating Michigan the second time. They really have not been playing that hot overall. For me, BYU will win this game.
Moving on to the Texas Abilene Christian. Guys, this is a Texas team I have going extremely deep in this tournament. Abilene Christian, I mean, they've been back in Division I for 7 years now. Nice story. I think this is a team that might actually be a little overseeded. I think Texas will have no problems with Abilene Christian in that 3-14 matchup. UConn, Maryland. This could be one of the best games of the tournament. I could definitely see this game going either way, but we go back to when it comes down, I want a team who's got a dude, and James Bouknight is that dude for UConn.
Absolutely, and UConn's playing hot as well coming into this. And just plain and simple, man, you said it. He's going to be the difference maker, and that's why we both have UConn moving on to the second round.
And then the final game down in this East region is going to be Alabama versus Iona. Great story for Rick Pitino after he's had his issues at Louisville, got another coaching job. He might go down as the best coach in college basketball history. He may not be viewed that way, but he may be the best coach in college basketball history. He can coach his way into getting the Gales into the NCAA tournament. There is just way too big of a talent discrepancy really between Alabama and Iona. So I know we each have Alabama moving on to the second round. Going over to the other side of the bracket in the South region, you've got Baylor versus Hartford. Same thing, guys. This is not a Virginia UMBC situation. Baylor will cruise into that second round. I know we each have that. But we have a very interesting matchup in that next game between 8 and 9, and that's North Carolina versus Wisconsin. Looking at this game for me, they've got the coach in Roy Williams. They've got the talent. They really haven't been able to figure it out, quote unquote. However, this is a team the last 45 days has been playing a lot better basketball. I don't see Wisconsin as being able to have the athletes to keep up with North Carolina.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, this has not been a storybook season for North Carolina by any means. But for me, you said it, man, they've got the better talent, and you've got Roy Williams. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. I'm taking UNC.
We each have UNC taking on Baylor. As we look forward, I'm not choosing it, but this is a UNC team that has enough talent to beat Baylor. And so if you want to pick it, I would not hate on it at all. Yep. Going down to that 5-12 matchup, a very trendy pick is Winthrop over Villanova. And I think the main reason for that is that Colin Gillespie is out for Villanova. I still believe that Villanova has just too much talent to lose that game. Really nothing against Winthrop. Pat Kelsey, has a good Winthrop team. I just think that Villanova has too many pieces even without Gillespie.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. You and I differ on this one, actually. I've got Winthrop on my bracket, so I am going to ride the trend a little bit. I think the loss of Gillespie is going to hurt them. That being said, if I'm wrong on this, am I surprised? Absolutely not. Jay Wright's one of the best coaches in the tournament, but I do have Winthrop moving on to the second round.
Yeah, it's fine. We can turn that beer into a six-pack by the time we get done with this. I don't see any problems with that. They will play the winner of Purdue, North Texas. This is a Purdue team. We actually, in one of our bracketology videos, broke down as a team you might want to see the Zags avoid in the NCAA tournament. The Matt Painter's squad is a very good team. I think they kind of get lost in the shuffle in the Big Ten. I think we each have Purdue moving on in this game.
Yep. Yes, we do. Yeah, it's Purdue is just too well balanced, man. They've got some great wins on the season, and while North Texas, good to see them get in the tournament. They've been playing well. Purdue's just too much here.
This next matchup, Texas Tech, Utah State, two very similar teams, two very good defensive teams. Utah State does not really have the talent on the offensive end that they have in previous seasons. This is a Chris Baird team going into the preseason that was very highly regarded. I don't have the guts to maybe push them as far in this tournament as some people do. But I'm going to say it right now. Do not be surprised if he takes his team on another Final Four run.
Yeah, it's they've got the pieces and they've got the coach. For me, the defense is just very real at Texas Tech, and that is exactly why they'll be moving on to the second round.
So we each have Texas Tech over Utah State in that one. And then number 3, Arkansas versus 14 Colgate. Another trendy pick that I've seen. I believe Arkansas is another team in this tournament that most people don't know about. Moses Moody, an NBA prospect for Arkansas. I just think that this is a very talented Arkansas team that I think has the ability to make the Elite Eight as well. I don't think Colgate's going to be able to keep up in that matchup.
Yeah, I agree on that. 15 games on the season for Colgate, 5 against Boston University. They really just have not seen anybody like Arkansas, so Arkansas has been moving on.
A very good game in this first round is going to be 7 Florida versus 10 Virginia Tech. Ever since Keontae Johnson went down for Florida, they have not been the same team. Rightfully so. I mean, that kid is a first-round talent for Florida. But Mike Young has this Virginia Tech team playing together. If you want to get into just like the team aspect of it and a team that plays for their coach, plays a style of basketball that they all buy into, that's Virginia Tech.
Yeah, absolutely. Virginia Tech has been great. For me, I've got Florida in this game. Trey Mann is the difference maker. I think he has a great game in this first round and takes his team on to the next day.
So you've got Florida. I've got Virginia Tech moving on in that matchup. Ohio State versus Oral Roberts. Guys, Ohio State is a very talented team.
Yeah.
I don't see Oral Roberts really presenting too much of a challenge there. I think this is an Ohio State team that can make a very deep run in this tournament. We saw how good they were in the Big Ten Championship. Dwayne Washington, E.J. Liddell, very good players for Ohio State. I'm assuming you have Oral Roberts in that one.
Yeah, obviously. No, it's Ohio State moving on.
And in the Midwest region, as we move on, number 1 Illinois takes on Drexel. Pencil in Illinois. No reason to get too far into that one.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, that 8-9 matchup in Loyola versus Georgia Tech, I think will be a fantastic game. I went back and forth on this. I think Georgia Tech's a terrible matchup for Loyola. But I think this Loyola team might be better than the Final Four team a couple years ago.
Yeah, they're a great team. We're going to have limited fans in Indy this year, and I think it's the exact team that you're going to see people get behind. I do have Loyola Chicago moving on to the second round to face Illinois.
And then in that 5-12 matchup, you've got 5 Tennessee versus number 12 Oregon State. Oregon State coming off of their Pac-12 championship, kind of on that Georgetown run that no one really saw coming. I like that they're playing hot. I think that game can go down to the buzzard, but I like Tennessee in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I've got Tennessee marked as well. Yves Pons is just too much. Oregon State, they won their tournament. They're playing well, but for me, Pond's the difference maker. Tennessee wins this game.
San Diego State versus Syracuse. I think we defer on this one. Jim Boeheim, another coach, you got to give him one more game in the tournament than maybe you think. His son's no joke. Buddy Boeheim can shoot the rock. This is a Syracuse team I'm picking over San Diego State. I know you've got different.
Yeah, I've got San Diego State. I think their defense, their ability to slow the game down a little bit will help them in this. So I've got them shutting down Buddy Boeheim and taking the win.
And then West Virginia versus Morehead State. Props to Morehead State. They've been to the tournament, done things in the past, but West Virginia, Huggy on that team. I think this is a team that's primed to make an Elite Eight run. I've got West Virginia in that 3-14 matchup. I think you've got the same.
Yep.
That Clemson-Rutgers game is another very highly, people are going back and forth on that. I like this Rutgers team. I think they're playing really good basketball right now. I think that they are a team, I'll tell you right now, I'll give you a little secret. I've got them meeting West Virginia in the Sweet 16. I think that this team can honestly take down Houston eventually. And I think you've got Rutgers in that first game as well.
I do have Rutgers, yep. So they're going to be moving on to the second round.
And then Houston. Houston takes on Cleveland State. Cleveland State, a program that's done things in the NCAA tournament. I think Houston is very vulnerable, as I just said. I just don't think Cleveland State is going to be the team to do it. So we've got our first round picks in. I think we each have kind of our different upsets that are in there. I know we're super high on a few of them. But going into the round of 32, Gonzaga versus Oklahoma. I've got the Zags in that one. Yep. I don't think that either Oklahoma or Missouri is going to
not enough pieces
present enough of a challenge to the Zags. And then Ohio versus UC Santa Barbara. We both love this Ohio team.
Jason Preston.
UC Santa Barbara. Yeah, just say the name again. Jason Preston.
Preston. Yep, remember it.
You're gonna be watching him in the NBA here soon. I think we each have Ohio taking on Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. So Zags would be taking on a 13 seed in the Sweet 16. And then in that, I've got USC over Kansas going into the Sweet 16. I've got Iowa versus Oregon to take on USC.
Yeah, and that game's going to be a great game. I know a lot of people have Oregon marked in that. For me, Luka Garza is too much. I see Iowa taking that win.
This is an Iowa team that they may not be able to guard a paper bag, as my co-host likes to say. But if you want to give them some credit, this is a team that has been in a lot of close games, and I've been very impressed with how they play in tight games. I think that will be a good game between them and Oregon, but I like Iowa in that. Down in the East region, I've got Michigan over LSU. I think LSU has the talent, but even with the injuries that Michigan has, I still think they have enough to win that game.
Yeah, definitely. I think Michigan's a great team. I could see LSU winning that, but the lack of production out of the bench worries me a little bit, so I do see Michigan advancing there.
And then I've got Florida State over Georgetown. I think you have Florida State over Colorado in that next one. Again, this is a Florida State team that can make a Final Four run. In that next matchup, you would have BYU versus Texas. I have Michigan State versus Texas. I think we each have Texas coming out of that.
Definitely.
Give you a little preview. I have Texas going all the way to the Final Four. I love Shaka Smart's team. I think this is a team that will give the Zags a real run for their money. I think when we look forward into the Elite Eight, they'll have a very tough matchup, but I don't think either BYU or Michigan State is going to be able to keep up with the Longhorns. And then I think we each have Alabama in that second game.
Yep.
Over UConn going into the Sweet 16. Going back up to the South region, Baylor over North Carolina. Don't be surprised if Roy Williams and the Tar Heels make that a game or even shock the world and pull off an upset. And then I've got Purdue over Villanova. I think you've got Purdue over Winthrop, if that's correct.
That is correct.
Same thing. Matt Painter's squad's this team is legit. If Baylor survives North Carolina, they will be in for a very tough matchup in the Elite Eight versus Purdue. Mm-hmm. I do have Chris Baird over Arkansas in that game. I think
me as well.
Arkansas is a more talented team, but I like the way Chris Baird's squad plays together. I think the Red Raiders will take that one into the Sweet 16. And then I've got Ohio State over Virginia Tech. So I think we each have that Ohio State-Texas Tech matchup in the Elite Eight in the South region.
Yeah, too much for Ohio State with Dwayne Washington and Liddell. Both just great players. They're going to take that win.
Going down into the Midwest region, got Illinois over Loyola Chicago. Can you imagine if that game was in like the United Center in a normal season? How much fun would that be?
Yeah.
And then going forward, I'm not sure we actually covered this one. We had Oklahoma State over Liberty in the first round. We missed that one in our first round. Liberty's a good squad, but Cade Cunningham and the rest of that Oklahoma State team, they got underseeded. They got a terrible draw.
Yeah.
I feel like if they would have been seeded as a 2 or 3 seed, people would have them going further, but they are still a great team. I have them over Tennessee into the Sweet 16.
Same.
West Virginia over Syracuse. I think you have West Virginia over San Diego State. We saw this team take on Gonzaga. This West Virginia team has all the pieces to make a deep run into this tournament. And then I said it in the last round, I do have Rutgers beating Houston as kind of my first round of 32 upset. I just think this Houston team's very vulnerable. They're very talented. But this Rutgers team reminds me of that Northwestern team that lost to Gonzaga that hadn't been to the NCAA tournament in however long. I think Rutgers is due for a similar run in this tournament.
I could see it happening. I've got Houston in this game. Rutgers could definitely pull it off, but they've dropped a few duds throughout the season. And for me, Quentin Grimes for Houston is going to have a good game and pull out this win.
Going to the Sweet 16, this is where that magical run ends for Ohio. We've got the Zags moving on to the Elite Eight. And on the other side of that matchup where you've got Iowa taking on USC, USC has all the pieces to win that game. I think they'll give Luka Garza and Iowa a lot of problems. However, Fran McCaffrey's team, I just think, is too talented. They play together. They are a veteran-led team. Yep. I do have Iowa. I think so do you, taking on the Zags in the Elite Eight. Going down into the East region, I have Florida State picking off Michigan. I think this is where the injuries really catch up for Michigan.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair. It's just too much. Losing Livers is a huge, huge hit. Dickinson can carry you a long ways, but there's just too much depth and talent on Florida State. I have them pulling off that upset as well.
And then I think this is our one discrepancy we have in the Elite Eight. I have Texas over Alabama. You've got Alabama over Texas. When we talk about great games in the tournament, this might end up being, aside from like the championship, the best game of the tournament.
Absolutely. It's a great game lined up. Texas has some absolute dudes. McCamey, Andrew Jones, Greg Brown. But for me, Bama's just too much. They are so athletic out there. Shackelford, Quinterly, Petty Jr., Herb Jones. I mean, they just are loaded, and they're going to pull out this win.
I've got Baylor over Purdue to advance to the Elite Eight. Ohio State over Texas Tech, so we will have chalk 1 versus 2 in the top of the South region. Going down to the Midwest, I think Illinois is just too much for Cade Cunningham and this Oklahoma State team.
Agreed.
Illinois over Huggy and West Virginia. I've got West Virginia over Rutgers to move into the Elite Eight to take on Illinois in that Midwest region. So going to the Elite Eight, we're going to have a Gonzaga-Iowa matchup, a rematch. I think that this will be a very good game. Zeg fans need to be a little careful because they already won this game, and I think Zeg fans think they dominated this game. This will be a very tough one for the Bulldogs. However, I do still have Gonzaga coming out on top.
Yep.
Going down to the East region, I have Texas versus Florida State. You have Alabama versus Florida State. I have Texas moving on to the Final Four. I believe you have Alabama.
That's correct. I have Bama in the Final Four. Yep.
I'd be fine with either one of those. Those are two great teams.
Yeah.
Back to the South region, I have Ohio State over Baylor going into the Final Four. We actually defer on that one. I think that's where Baylor's road ends. But Baylor's a great squad. Wouldn't be surprised to see them meet the Zags in the championship. And then I do have Illinois over Huggy and West Virginia to advance to the Final Four as well. So my Final Four is Gonzaga, Texas, Illinois, and Ohio State. Yours would be Gonzaga, Alabama, Illinois, and Baylor.
Yep.
A little bit more chalk over there. I think I'm going out a little bit more on a limb. We'll see how it breaks down. But who do you have in your championship game?
For me, Illinois is just too much for Baylor. I think Coburn has a great game there. So for me, it is Gonzaga and Illinois in the championship. And it's going to be a great game.
And same here. I've got Gonzaga and Illinois in the championship. And if you watch our program, I think you each know who we're choosing to cut down the nets. I think it'll be a great game, but we each have Zags over Illinois. Mine final score, 87-82. Quickly, what's your final score for that game?
I'm going to go 88-80.
88-80. All right. Well, you heard it here first. That's our entire bracket. Shared it with you guys. Let us know down in the comments where you agree, disagree, how you see your bracket. Hope we helped you out a little bit. But guess what? We are just 24 hours away from having March Madness and just a couple days away from finally getting to see our boys and the Zags start the NCAA tournament.